Saturday morning edition of The Sweat. I am Steve Buchanan alongside Julian Edlow, Josh Applebaum. We are going to get into a little bit of everything here on this Saturday morning. Every sport you probably want information on, we're going to be covering here on this Saturday edition morning of The Sweat here on DraftKings Network and VSiN. Let's talk about what we're going to talk about today. Let's take a look here at the graphic.
Emerson Lotzman
transition. We're going to get some college football best bets later in the show. UFC 294 that's happening at 2 o'clock Eastern this afternoon in Abu Dhabi. John Anik is going to check in there as well. And then Julian and Josh are going to get into a little bit of a NBA season preview, some best bets ahead before the opener this week. But let's get into first a little bit of NFL talk, an NFL hangover. Obviously, the Jaguars and Saints played here on Thursday. Jaguars winners. Once again, people were doubting this team, the hellacious schedule that they had in the month of October, but they were able to prevail, have snapped off 4 wins in a row. Let's talk about that team there. There was a lot of uncertainty coming into this game about the health of Trevor Lawrence. That was nothing what we expected. He actually was, I think he ended up as the lead rusher in that game for the team there, which is obviously a good sign moving forward, dealing with that knee sprain and all that. What did the Jags show you, Josh, with their 4 straight wins now in the month of October? They had wins in 19 days over the Falcons, Bills, Colts, Saints.
Yeah, I'll go macro or micro and then macro here when it comes to this one, Steve. So in terms of the game itself, a couple of things. Number one, unders been great this year. Unders are 56 and 37, 60%. However, not in this game. We saw a lot of late movement toward this over. It was hovering around 40 much of the week. It got all the way up to, I think it was closed like 41.5, so that late movement. I think after a week where I think unders went like 11 and 2 or had a great week.
Oh, it was brutal.
Yeah, it was brutal for a lot of overbettors there, but they got some revenge here on this one. In terms of the bigger overall angle here, Steve, I think the Jags are just kind of picking up where they left off. They had a great year last year. It's a coach quarterback league, and if you have Lawrence and Peterson together, that's one of the better combos here in the NFL. Now they're 5-2. Their win total is 10.5. It's pretty much even, -110 both sides. Playoffs, they're -350. That's a little bit steep for me. I think the angle here, Steve, is to bet them to win their division. It's -165. Doesn't seem that high of a price for me. And if you look at their competitors, the Texans, they've been a nice story, but still a young team building. They're +330. Titans are +700. They have a bunch of injuries. Tannehill got banged up last game. Then the Colts, +900. They were competitive, but now Richardson's out for the year. So this is a team that's on the rise, picking up where they left off after that great playoff win, coming back against the Chargers. I like them -165 now to win their division.
And if I'm not mistaken, I think that's about where they landed when the season began for them to win the division, because they were favorites to win the division, but they weren't overall huge favorites here. But Julian, I know you were big on the Saints in this game. You were very vocal on Twitter about how upset you were about the play of the Saints.
You had the sharp line move, though. Just didn't come through.
Oh, yeah, fantastic. Did nothing for it.
Look, I had this spot for a while. I had a small bet on Indy on Sunday because it was kind of a poor spot for Jacksonville coming back from the first ever double London game. They win and cover both. They got off to a sluggish start and then win that game against the Colts. But the spot that I had for a while was that Thursday night. It's now your second week back from London, but you're on a short week on the road. You add in Lawrence getting dinged up with the knee injury. It was one of my favorite spots. Jacksonville looked pretty good, though, and what I failed to account for was just the ineptitude of the Saints' offense.
Good word.
Thank you. It's a large word. I speak on camera. I write articles. I know words like this. The ineptitude of Derek Carr in that offense, throwing the ball out of bounds, yelling at his receivers, not looking downfield, and then when he finally forces downfield, oh, look, a pick six. So, frustrating night to be on the side of the Saints that they just could not get anything going. Plenty of opportunities, and that offense gave it all up. But just brutal look for Derek Carr, in that game. I know we're going to talk about it.
Yeah, let's kind of continue with that Saints there. They continue to be very up and down, very inconsistent. Dennis Allen says inconsistency is the problem. Wow, that's a shock there. But what is the problem with the Saints? Now, if we look at Derek Carr's stats overall, his yards per pass attempt at 6.3, that's the lowest of his career since he was in the league as a rookie in 2014. Maybe also, call me crazy, maybe Alvin Kamara shouldn't lead the league amongst all running backs in targets in just 4 games played. He has 39 already. That's 7 more than Josh Jacobs and Bijan Robinson, who are tied for second in the league at this point. Maybe start going downfield a little bit more, but then here's the funny part. He actually taken more deep shots than anyone in the league. He's taken 42 attempts of 20 yards or more, but has a 31% completion percentage in those scenarios. Can you pinpoint, Julian Edlow, what is wrong with the Saints at this point, or is it everything?
I can pinpoint what's wrong with
Here
this
we
team.
go.
It's not the defense. They have a good defense.
It is not the defense.
It's not the running back position. It's a little bit the offensive line, which had some moving pieces on the Thursday night game, but did all right. I'll pinpoint the problem. The problem is Derek Carr.
Yeah.
Derek Carr is the problem. The way that he plays, you just mentioned, he's going downfield, but he cannot connect. And then I would assume the locker room, his connection with his teammates, because he's throwing balls out of bounds and yelling at his receivers to go get them. That's not going to work very well.
Right.
Every play, every incompletion, it's him complaining about something. Look in the mirror, dude. You are the problem.
Right.
Everybody else probably complaining about you in the locker room. I don't know if Jameis Winston is the answer. Obviously, he hasn't won much, but the talent is there. He's got a 5,000-yard season under his belt. Maybe the deep balls connect with Jameis, just shaking it up, trying something different. I don't know. It's not the best answer in the world, but I know that Derek Carr, who has had one good season in his NFL career, is not the answer for the Saints.
Josh, even if they are on the same page as Derek Carr, they're not on the same page on the field. At least that's what it looked like against the Jaguars.
Yeah, I think that comes down to coaching here. Dennis Allen, I think obviously going from Peyton to Allen is a big of a downgrade. Obviously, we're seeing Peyton struggle in Denver, but I'm kind of with Julian in this one. You really can't blame the defense here. They've been great. The offense is only averaging 19 points a game. That's 21st in the NFL. And what was the identity of the Saints when they were great with Drew Brees and Peyton? It was offense. It was going down to New Orleans and having a really tough time with visiting teams going into the Dome. But I'm not going to write off the Saints entirely here. I mean, they do start 2-0. They've lost 4 of their last 5. Things don't look good. But I dial up the odds here, guys, at DraftKings. Their adjusted win total is 8.5, but it's over -140. So that kind of piqued my interest. This is a team that, again, has lost 4 of their last 5, yet they're still juicing up the over 8.5. And it comes down to the schedule, guys. If you look at their next few games, at the Colts, they're a short favorite. I think they open -1.5. They're up to 2. They're going to have a big rest advantage playing Thursday night. Colts obviously play this weekend. And then they're going to play at home against the Bears, at the Vikings. You don't know what we're going to get against the Vikings. Falcons, Lions will be tough, but then Panthers, Giants, Bucks, Falcons again. You're going to have a lot of winnable games there down the stretch. So if you look at those division odds as well, they're only +200. Bucks are the favorite +160. We saw the Saints as the favorite to win this division going into the year. And again, even though they've struggled, I still like that over 8.5. It's juiced up. I think the books are telling you something.
Moving on to a subject that I did not expect to be talking about here this season. Julio Jones is back in the league. He's with the Eagles now. How much of an impact is Jones going to have for Philly? It's a little bit interesting here, too, because honestly, aside from Devonta Smith and A.J. Brown, the Eagles don't really have a solidified wide receiver 3 in this offense. Zacchaeus, 7 targets. Watkins, 5 targets. Dallas Goedert is essentially their slot receiver at this point. He's played 125 snaps out of the slot. But do you guys think that Julio Jones is going to make much of an impact on an Eagles team that really doesn't feel like they need help offensively, Julian?
They absolutely do need a little bit of help offensively, and this is what it is, a little bit of help. Julio Jones can't do too much at this stage of his career. He was put with Tom Brady in Tampa, didn't do too much. He couldn't stay on the field. So it's like you're going to get him either on the field here and there with some injuries, or you're going to have to play him significantly reduced snaps and just try and get something out of him on certain downs. And I think that's how Philly is going to use him. But there's a relationship there. He played opposite A.J. Brown that one season in Tennessee.
Yep.
So they know each other. And he's going to have to be a weapon that they use in certain packages. I would guess a lot of third downs. But again, this is like an all-time receiver that you're getting at the very end of his career. Anything you can get out of him is a bonus.
Yeah, Josh, at the end of his career, not much expected. Does that role suit him?
Yeah, I think it's actually a good pickup here. It's a low risk. It could be, a decent reward. And again, who picked him up? Howie Roseman. Roseman's one of the best executives in the NFL. If he likes him and sees something, then I'll lean with Roseman and think that there's still some value here. Again, it's expectations. He's 34 years old. Last year with Tom Brady, 24 catches, 299 yards, 2 TDs. But here's the thing. He might be wide open. When he was great with the Falcons, he would always get double covered. Are you going to double cover him? No, he's going to be one-on-one against maybe the third receiver from the opposing team with Smith and A.J. Brown getting a lot of the coverage. I like the Eagles to buy low. I like getting teams that you like off a loss, so losing to the Jets. Now they're 5-1. They're no longer undefeated, but 11.5 wins over. It's -120. I like them to win 12 games. They're -165 to the NFC East. Cowboys have some injuries. I like that play too. So again, if you like a team you want to target them after a loss because you're going to get a better number in the market.
All right, we'll go quickly on this one here. Mecole Hardman traded back to the Chiefs. Crowded wide receiver room to begin with. We have no wide receiver with more than 27 targets. What do we feel about Hardman going to the Chiefs?
This one I like a lot because he's been a previous fit there. He's going to slot into the Tyreek Hill role. He's an upgrade or an addition to Kadarius Toney with a ton of familiarity and had really big games for Kansas City before he left. So easy plug and play for the Chiefs. I like it a lot. They could use an upgrade.
Josh, quick thought here.
Familiarity, speed, I think it's a good pickup. Didn't get much to get him. Mahomes is plus 450 MVP. I like that number. 2 is the favorite. Mahomes is the value play.
Still kind of concerned that Rashee Rice is not getting more than he should be in this Chiefs offense. I think he's actually been one of their better wide receivers so far, but obviously Hardman is going to cut into that a little bit as well. All right, segment 1 in the books, wrapped up here. When we come back, our favorite UFC announcer, Jon Anik, is going to join us from Abu Dhabi, the site of UFC 294 this afternoon to break down the fight with Emerson. Is that where he is? We'll find out. Stay tuned.
All right, joining us now halfway across the world, the man, the myth, the legend, Jon Anik, going to be on the call for UFC 294 tonight. Good morning, or should I say good afternoon or good evening? How you doing, Jon?
Great to hear your voice, Emerson. You know, I don't do a lot of interviews on the eve of pay-per-views because of my schedule, but when DraftKings and Emerson call, you take that call every day of the week. We're here in Abu Dhabi on the eve of UFC 294 and excited to break it down with my guy today.
Yeah, dude, look at us, Instagram buddies just DMing each other left and right. Hey, question for you. Less than 2 weeks ago, both these headlining fights like evaporated into thin air here. Like, what the hell happened?
Yeah, it was wild. We had two major injuries involving Brazilians Paulo Costa and former UFC lightweight champion Charles Oliveira. And I know the promotion cuts my check, but it just speaks to the combat sports leader of UFC's greatness that not only do they have the best athletes in the world, but their high-level athletes are willing to step up and save the day. So Kamaru Usman, former welterweight champion, stepping into the co-main event against Khamzat Chimaev. And, of course, perhaps the bigger story, Alexander Volkanovski getting a second crack at the lightweight champion Islam Makhachev, got the call 11 days ago, cut down from 181 pounds to 155 today. And suboptimal in terms of the cardio and the lack of training camp, but a lot of people believe Alexander Volkanovski is still going to pull it off.
Yeah, John, I was going to ask you how these late switches impact the card as a whole, because I've seen some people on the interwebs almost making an argument that this is not a drop-off at all, and in fact, maybe a possible upgrade here.
Yeah, I mean, it's certainly a prevailing storyline. You may not hear me suggest that because of my respect for the athletes that fell off and just the nature of those injuries. But yes, Emerson, I do believe this will do better on pay-per-view. I do think the magnitude of this fight card got bigger. And a big reason why is because the fight between Islam Makhachev and Alexander Volkanovski back in February was a true super fight. I didn't think it was as close as the masses did, but there was a groundswell of support for a rematch. We didn't get the immediate rematch. Volkanovski then defended his featherweight title, but now he's getting the crack. And even though he didn't have a training camp, a lot of people feel like he's live as hell as an underdog come Saturday night.
I mean, late fill-in's really nothing new to this sport here, John, and especially in your career. What kind of performances should we expect out of these late fill-ins? What do you think?
So it's hard. And for those of you on DraftKings Sportsbook, you might have some pause in terms of having a big bet on a fight like this because there are a lot of unknowns. And even though these guys tell some truth in the fighter meetings with us on Thursday, you're not getting the entire story. Now, I do believe Kamaru Usman is in pretty good shape. I do believe that Khamzat Chimaev has been on his radar forever, but this is his UFC middleweight debut. And even though it's a 3-round fight instead of 5, we don't necessarily know how Usman's going to look at 185 pounds. So even though that number is swelling now close to plus 300, I think there are a lot of unknowns on the Usman side. Alexander Volkanovski was super competitive in that first fight. But Emerson, he didn't have a training camp, right? So to expect that he can weaponize cardio and extend Makhachev and weaponize pace, I just don't see it like that. So I think Volkanovski really has to excel early. He can. I think he's going to manage risks differently. I think he's going to take more risks, and maybe it'll produce the desired result.
Okay, so not giving him much of a chance here, Volkanovski?
Well, I just think it's asking a lot to be able to fight his fight, I guess is probably a better way to put it. Can he do everything that he would do? You know, Emerson, he just defended his title in July at featherweight, right? Then he underwent surgery on his arm. And if you're fighting again at 55, you want to rebuild the muscle, go through a hard training camp. Doesn't mean he can't win, but I'd give him a better chance if he actually had ample time to prepare for this challenge.
All right, then what about the Nigerian Nightmare here? What chance are we giving him? Because, right, he's not new to a short notice opportunity, is he?
Sure. Yeah, no, he stepped up in Abu Dhabi and fought Jorge Masvidal on less than a week's notice. This is just a different physical, stylistic challenge. Khamzat Chimaev is one of the best pound-for-pound fighters in the world. I think he might be the best middleweight in the world right now, with all due respect to the champion, Sean Strickland, and I think the betting line against Kamaru Usman reflects that. It's going to be an absolute dogfight. I think it'll play out primarily on the feet. But Khamzat Chimaev hasn't competed a whole lot over the last 3 years, so some people might forget just how good this guy is. This may be the toughest fight of Kamaru Usman's career on paper, and the fact that he didn't have a training camp on the front end, I think, makes it exponentially more difficult. But you just never know, Emerson. In mixed martial arts, you just never know.
No, it's true, man. Another fight or two on this card, John, that you really like, you want to push here, you're excited about?
I'm excited about the whole card, but certainly the light heavyweight title eliminator between Magomed Ankalaev and Johnny Walker. Fascinating clash of styles. And these are two of the best 205-pound fighters in the world. And this fight is happening 3 weeks before Alex Pereira and Yuri Prochazka will fight for the light heavyweight title. So if Johnny Walker, Magomed Ankalaev can get a finish Saturday night, I think this moves them into prime position to potentially get a title shot first quarter 2024. A lot of people believe Ankalaev, and the betting line reflects this, is the best 205-pound fighter in the world. He's got this long unbeaten streak. We'll see how it goes for him. He vows to be more aggressive. Sometimes they don't always turn those words into action, but I do expect that you're going to see a meaner, angrier Magomed Ankalaev here on pay-per-view Saturday.
Okay, so is that one we should be looking at like an underdog to pull off an upset? I know you've already talked the two meaty main fights there. Anything else?
So it's hard for me, obviously, as the play-by-play guy to give you live underdogs or give you any leans. You know, one thing on the ground I would suggest to you folks, Anshul Jubilee is just the second native of India to compete in the UFC. And he's improved immeasurably over the last year, but I think the jury's still out on the Indian fighters. So I will admit to being a little bit surprised that Mike Breeden, even though he hasn't won a fight in the UFC, and he is not the undefeated fighter Jubilee is, I was just surprised to see Breeden as that big an underdog. But I don't have to tell you guys, you got an undefeated fighter on one side, another guy's 0-4 in the UFC. That is certainly reflective of the price. I just think Breeden has more of a chance than maybe the odds makers and the betting public is giving him, at least to this point in time.
I mean, this card looks amazing from top to bottom, has fans absolutely fired up, John, but you really can't say the same about watching your Patriots right now. What's going on in Foxborough, dude?
Buffalo Bills minus 8.5 is my best bet of the week. It's amazing to hear all these NFL sharps suggest that they don't trust the Bills going into Foxborough. Have you seen that New England injury report? Have you seen that offense yards played? I mean, I don't think New England gets to 17, and I do think this is the weekend the Buffalo Bills get right. So that's my best bet of the week. Bills minus 8.5. And, you know, Jonathan Kraft needs to step up here. We need a new regime come 2024, and I think the younger Kraft is going to get the memo and affect some change in Foxborough. We need it.
I believe it's the biggest hole that the Patriots are in terms of spread against the Bills at home in like more than 3 decades here. Is Mac Jones the answer or not?
Certainly not. He is one of the bottom-feeding NFL quarterbacks. He's one of the 5 worst quarterbacks in the league. He's in that class with Desmond Ridder and Sam Howell and those guys. And I don't think you're going to see the Patriots pick up the option on Mac Jones. Unequivocally not the answer. And the entire organization deserves widespread criticism for going into an NFL season, because this is not a franchise that is okay bottoming out. They all deserve to be criticized for going into a season and suggesting that Mac Jones could be QB1 in the NFL. Not the guy.
Jon Anik, appreciate you making some time for us here on The Sweat. Looking forward to you calling all the fights tonight. And everyone, go download the Anik and Florian podcast right meow. This dude is entertaining as hell. Gentlemen, back to you in Studio A.
Thanks, Emerson. Great breakdown there. Big UFC day. It's not just college football, but a lot of biting, as I like to call it. So let's talk about this main event here, Makhachev and Volkanovski. I think a couple things important to know about this game, and I actually have this bout, and I have a play on this fight here. So first off, Makhachev's great. 24-1, Volkanovski 26-2. This is a rematch, as John was mentioning here. Back in February when these two fought, it was a unanimous decision win by Makhachev. And one thing that I learned from a couple of my colleagues at VSiN, Gamblin' Lou Finicaro, and Reed Kuhn, is that when you get to these rematches, typically you see whoever wins the first one end up winning the second one. About 2/3 of the time, whoever wins the first bout wins the second bout. So I'm going to target Makhachev here, guys. Number one, this is a bit of a fade the trendy dog play. As John mentioned, Volkanovski is a very popular bet. Totally get it. Great fighter. You're getting a pretty good payout here at plus 205. How do you not take that plus money? However, I think Makhachev is the play here. Number one, the line's moving in his direction. Even though the public is all over Volkanovski, we saw at one point earlier this week around minus 225 for Makhachev. Now he's up to minus 250. So why is the line going to Makhachev if the public is all over Volkanovski? You have the rematch angle. And then also, I look for some other things when I'm trying to bet UFC. Number one, the physical and youth advantages, and that's what Makhachev has. He's about 5'10". Volkanovski's 5'6", so you have a height advantage. The reach is the same, 71 inches, but also some youth advantage here for Makhachev. He's 31 years old. Volkanovski's 35, so we're starting to check off a few boxes here. Also, as John mentioned, this is going to be in Abu Dhabi. Makhachev is kind of from that region, so maybe you have a crowd that's rooting for him. Maybe get some energy off of that. Maybe if this goes to a decision, the judges here will kind of lean and be a little bit predispositioned to back Makhachev. And then also you look at kind of the technique here. Makhachev is a better grappler, better wrestler. He absorbs far less punishment, 1.27 strikes a minute versus 3.36. Also, Volkanovski, late addition, cut weight. I don't want to bet on fighters who had to cut weight and kind of got that late call. So if I'm going to go minus 250, if not, I think the angle here is maybe Makhachev to win by decision if it goes to the judges, plus 165. So that's what I'll be sweating here in the UFC. We got a lot coming back here on The Sweat. Julian, Steve, what do we got coming next? College football. Looking forward to it. Welcome back to The Sweat. I'm Josh Applebaum of VSiN alongside Julian Edlow of DraftKings. We got to talk some college football, but let's start off the conversation here with James Franklin, head coach of Penn State. Biggest game of the day is Ohio State and Penn State. Currently, it's Ohio State only laying 4.5 at home. James Franklin thinks this might be a tight game.
Certain games, no matter what the differential is, talent differential, people can hang around for a half. And then over time, the talent takes over. So those are the two things, and I think we have closed the gap with a lot of what people would consider the top 5 programs in the country. We have slowly chipped away at that, so we've put ourselves in a much better position. But I think it's going to come down to a 1-possession game, and we got to be able to find a way to win that situation at the end of the game, whatever it is, 4-minute, 2-minute, whatever it may be. We got to be able to capitalize in that situation on the road in a tough environment.
Yeah, so Julian, obviously this is the biggest game of the day. You and I were talking earlier this week. I don't love the college football slate this week, but I got to love this game because it's the most heavily bet game of the day. Everybody's going to be watching this thing, and we have 2 great teams going head-to-head. Both teams are undefeated, 6-0. We have Penn State ranked 7th, Ohio State ranked 3rd. And I'm curious your thoughts on this game. I have a take on this one, but Julian, what do you think? This is a very short spread. It's -4.5 for Ohio State at home, kind of a low total as well. Are you going to take the points with Penn State here, or do you think Ohio State is maybe undervalued? By the way, the public is leaning Penn State in the points.
Yeah, a lot of people want to talk aside in this one, and I understand the points with Penn State. It's a public play. They've been really good. I really like their defense. I lean to Ohio State at home. I just think it's kind of a contrarian favorite, and this is a spot that sets up pretty well for them, and maybe you wind up taking some points with Penn State at home against Michigan. But ultimately, I'm passing on a side in this one, and I played the total early in the week at 47.5 on the under. I put it out at 47. I would bet it down to 44. I think this is going to be, you look at these defenses, Penn State's pitched a couple shutouts. Ohio State has held opponents to single digits 3 times. Obviously, it's a step up in class, but since Penn State allowed 15 to West Virginia in that opening game, they haven't allowed more than 13 to an opponent. I would compare it to the Ohio State-Notre Dame game. You get 2 higher-level opponents. That was a 17-14 final, and if Ohio State doesn't drive 95 yards with some questionable dropped interceptions, flags, 10 men on the field on defense, that's 14-10. So I think this is going to be a grind of a game. Both teams are stronger on defense, I would say, than offense. I could see this one going well under, even with the dropping total.
Yeah, I think you got a good number here, Julian, with the under. I'm going to lean under with you pretty hard. The one question is, has it moved too much where you're no longer comfortable playing it? Again, if you want to bet some unders, you want to pick them off earlier in the week before they fall. This opened 48. It's down to 45.5, but a really good bet split. Only 35% of bets are on the under, but it accounts for more than 50% of the money. And you mentioned it, Julian, 2 of the best scoring defenses here in college football, giving up less than 10 points a game. Now, my angle here is I'm going to go to the side. I'm going to money line Ohio State. And you mentioned kind of looking back toward previous games. So I liken this a lot to last week. USC, Notre Dame, Oregon, Washington, kind of similar situations where you had the most heavily bet games of the day. Public was on the dog, yet those contrarian home favorites came through. Now, you had Washington push that number. Money line, they won, however. Notre Dame obviously rolled, covered, and won regardless. But I like this as a fade the trendy dog play. Public's on Penn State. They say, hey, 2 really good teams, undefeated, close game, take the points. However, we're starting to see this line move toward Ohio State. When we came into the studio, Julian, it was 4.5, starting to creep up to 5. Tells you some money there is moving here toward Ohio State. And then also, great system match here. When 2 ranked teams face each other, take the home favorite straight up. Very simple. 11-1 this year. It's 82% since 2016. It's a bit of a high number, -185. But of course, bet to risk versus bet to win. I'm risking 1 unit, trying to get a little less than a half unit back. So give me Ohio State to win this game. Julian, let's keep cruising here. Tennessee and Alabama. Big matchup here in the SEC. Tennessee's ranked 17th overall. They're 5-1. Alabama is ranked 11th. They're 6-1. Not really where we expect them to be. Usually they're 1, 2, or 3. But what do you take out of this game here? Because this is kind of interesting. Alabama's laying 8.5, 9 points. Public's leaning Tennessee in the points, expecting a tight game. We've also seen this total fall 48.5 to 47.5. Any angle here for you on Tennessee and Bama?
Yeah, I mean, you mentioned Alabama's not where we expect them to be, but they have a chance to get where we expect them to be. And we weren't saying that after they barely scraped by USF on the road the week after they lose to Texas. Now, we weren't expecting the loss necessarily to Texas, But if you said this team was going to be 11-1 and face Georgia in the SEC championship game, we would say that sounds about right. And they have a chance to run the table and do that. The LSU game, I think, is going to be a bigger test in a couple weeks. But I like Alabama today against Tennessee. I don't know if I'm laying all the points. We saw last week a dominant start against Arkansas and then kind of let off late. Classic Alabama. I think this sets up for an Alabama first half spot if I play this game. I would lay the first half points with Alabama to come out strong against Tennessee. Jalen Milroe has been really solid at quarterback. I know they made the move after the Texas game. Ever since then, he has been solid. This is a really good defense. They're in a revenge spot for the 3-point loss on the walk-off field goal at Rocky Top last season. And I think this Tennessee team is much worse on both sides of the ball than they were last year. So I think Alabama, you can use them in a money line parlay as a piece there, or you can lay the points in the first half. I think they're going to get through on this game.
Yeah, I pretty much agree with you on this one, Julian. To me, early in the week, it looked like Tennessee was taking in some sharp action. They were getting 9.5. The line got down to 8.5, but now it's starting to creep back up the other way. You're starting to see this get back up to -9. And it's another fade the trendy dog kind of play. Public is leaning Tennessee in the points, 60% of bets, but you do have that angle of those two unranked teams take the home favorite. On the spread, it's really good as well as the money line. I'm going to go toward the under, Julian. You mentioned here maybe a lower scoring game. Look at some of these games that Alabama's played within their conference. You know, Arkansas, 24-21. Mississippi, Ole Miss, 24-10. This isn't the Alabama team with Tua and all those offensive stars that puts up, 50 points a game. They're kind of grinding it out. Still have a good defense, but not putting up a ton on offense. And I like the under. Open 48.5. It's down to 47.5. Public's hammering the over 70% of bets, yet this line is falling. It's only 30% bets, but almost 65% of the money. Both these teams are really good defensively, giving up only 16 points a game for Bama, 18 for Tennessee. Another angle that I like, Julian, if I'm going to bet an under, I want teams that run the ball. Both these teams like to run it. Tennessee is averaging 231 yards on the ground. Alabama hopefully will mitigate that a bit. 148 for Bama. So when you run the ball, you keep the clock going. You chew up the clock. That's a benefit toward an under. So I'll go under 47.5. Now, Julian, I want to talk to you about Utah and USC. I don't really have a huge angle on this game. The one thing that I did notice, a couple things. USC coming off a loss, obviously last week, looking to bounce back at home. Caleb Williams, what are you going to get out of him after he had kind of his worst game in college? I'm also looking at the key number of 7 right now because USC is -7, but it's just up
dipped to 6.5.
Yeah.
-115, 6.5.
Exactly, and that's critical to me if you can still get a 7. Looks like, +7 with Utah is falling toward the Utes. I'd lean +7 Utah, but what's your angle?
So this is going to be USC for me, and this is probably the last time, one of the only times, and the last time I will back USC. I don't think I've bet them on a spread. I've bet some team total overs on them. You and I were both on Notre Dame last week. That one was a little easier than expected with all the turnovers from Caleb Williams. Now, it's another tough defense in Utah, and we just saw what a tough defense did. But I have to imagine Caleb Williams corrects some of those mistakes. He needs a little bit more protection, but just don't throw those turnovers in your opponent's territory, and it leads to those easy points that gave Notre Dame that margin. I think if Caleb Williams cannot force those turnovers, force those throws, now maybe you're punting away to Utah. You don't need 40 points to win this game. You can win this game 27-20. You can win this game even less than that, 24-14, like that type of way against Utah, because this Utah team doesn't score. And now they're going on the road. USC's defense, why they're not going to win the Pac-12, why they're going to lose multiple more games in the Pac-12 and not reach the college football playoff, it is their defense. But today, at home in a bounce-back spot, I don't mind them against this Utah team that can't really move the ball. So I think USC does get this done by 7 or more. I would bet it that way. You could also use them as the money line parlay piece to go with Bama, the game we just talked about. So I think it's a good bounce back spot for USC, who lost twice to Utah last year. Got smoked in Vegas and lost by 1 at Utah. I think that this is kind of the last spot we can look at USC for this season, and then things are going to get a lot tougher.
Yeah, good point by you by pointing out this line fell 7 to 6.5. And you look at the juice on our board, it's -115 on the -6.5. So this is an 8 o'clock game. If you like USC, you probably want to get them now because this thing might rise back up to 7 before tip off here. Julian, let's keep cruising. Duke, Florida State. I got to play on this game. I'm going to take Duke in the points, +14. Everyone's betting Florida State, even though it's a big number. Obviously, Florida State is kind of back to their old ways, the old Seminoles. They're undefeated. They're highly ranked. And you saw this game, actually, at one point it was Florida State -15, -14.5. Now we're down to 14. I see some juice, like it may even go to 13.5. Looks like this line is going to Duke. Duke would also have a good angle here with their head coach, Elko. At Duke, he's 12-4 against the spread. This is almost like a mini Dan Campbell here, Julian. Guy that covers a lot of numbers, 4-1 ATS this year. He's been great as a dog. My one question is, the guy we're showing here, Riley Leonard, is he going to play or not? This is the kind of back and forth that a lot of bettors have to deal with when betting Duke. Is the star quarterback going to be in or not? If he's in, obviously that would kind of let you know that you like it even better and you want to grab the 14 before it falls to 13.5. But Julian, what's your take on this game? Are you with me grabbing the points, or is it Florida State in a blowout?
Laying off this one, tough time. Florida State is in a really good spot. Duke's got a lot of points. Duke's getting a lot of points here, but the quarterback situation and then Miles Jones, the cornerback, one of the best cornerbacks in the country for Duke, potentially being out. That's another one that I don't know if I can go to. Real quick, I will throw one at you, Josh. I played Wisconsin on the money line, minus 130 early. You can still get them late. No quarterback. That's why people are off it, but I like the bounce back spot for them. I don't care at Illinois coming off the Maryland win. We will be back on the Sweat.
And just like that, we've already hit week 9, match week 9 in the Premier League. So let's get some picks right now, shall we? With DraftKings editor Chinmay Vaidya. Good morning, of course, showing up in your Arsenal red. It's been a while, right? It's been a while since we've caught up here, Chinmay. So what has stood out to you since the last time we have checked in here? I'm talking big surprises or major storylines that we need to be aware of.
Well, you look at the top 4, and it's pretty much the big clubs, right? Arsenal, Tottenham, Manchester City, and Liverpool sitting there, all in title contention. It's still very early, but you have 2 of the other big 6, Man United and Chelsea, really struggling, and these 2 clubs have been struggling for a little bit now. Manchester United in a little bit of an ownership struggle. They have some questions about who is leading this club. The Glazers are not looking to sell a big stake, but they have found some interested parties, while Chelsea are just unable to get results on the field. And it's interesting to see these clubs with big wage bills and a lot of talent not doing so well. And then on the flip side, you have Brighton and Aston Villa, 2 clubs that have steadily kind of been coming up the table over the last few seasons in the Premier League, are hanging around in that top 6 mix. And we'll see if any of those clubs can stick around for the duration of the season. It is still very early. We're about a third of the way through the year. A lot of things can change, but at the moment, those 2 big 6 clubs, Man United and Chelsea, really concerning right now in terms of form.
Yeah, and your Arsenal squad unbeaten and in form here, taking on the Blues of Chelsea. What is a bet that you are targeting in this match, Chinmay?
Yeah, Arsenal have done really well this season, and I kind of liken it to college football a little bit. After beating Manchester City, you know, there was a long time when Alabama was very dominant in the SEC West, and a team would knock them off. But after knocking them off, now you have to go run the gauntlet and win the rest of your games. So this has usually been a test for Arsenal. Historically, they have not done well against Chelsea, but they've won 5 of the last 6 meetings against Chelsea, and they've actually won the last 3 at Stamford Bridge. So I think there's tremendous value for Arsenal here at plus 130 on the money line. I'll take the Gunners at that number anytime.
Well, how about Arsenal's North London rivals Tottenham, also unbeaten through 8 matches, Chinmay. Today facing Fulham, a team, the Spurs, by the way, have knocked off 3 straight times. Which side are you backing in this one?
The money line odds are not great on this one for Tottenham. There's not too much value, and I would never really back Tottenham to win a game anyway, just personally. But I think Son Heung-min has been fantastic this season for Spurs, and him as an anytime scorer at minus 110, I think that's about as good value as you're going to get, especially in this type of matchup. So I would take him as an anytime scorer for my Tottenham bet today.
All right. How about anyone else you like to tickle the twine and bury a Premier League goal today?
Alexander Isak for Newcastle comes in at minus 120, and this is actually a bit of a tough matchup because Crystal Palace have not given up that many goals, but Isak has scored 4 goals in the last 3 matches and is on a little bit of a hot streak, so I'd like him. Rashford offers a little more value, plus 130. It's a really favorable matchup against Sheffield United. They've allowed 22 goals in their 8 matches, and if you go with Man City, I know Haaland is the tempting one, but Julian Alvarez offers much more value at plus 120. And Brighton, I know we talked about how good they've been, but they've actually been a bit leaky at the back, allowing 16 goals so far this season. So I would look for Alvarez and Rashford if you're not feeling the value with Isak.
All right, what's another Premier League bet that we can find on your card today?
Big matchup for both these clubs, Aston Villa and West Ham. West Ham looking like a contender early in the season through the first 5 or so matches, and then has fallen off a bit, while Aston Villa surging up the table. I like Aston Villa on the money line, plus 115. This number could move a little bit before kickoff, but I like Aston Villa here on the money line.
So Premier League just getting started, 9 weeks in. Today, back in the States, final day of the MLS regular season, decision day. All Eastern Conference teams, I believe, are going to kick off at 6. Western Conference teams will simultaneously battle at 9 o'clock Eastern time. Chinmay, give me the most pressure-packed match of the day in MLS.
It's chaos in the Eastern Conference. You have Red Bulls, Chicago, New York, Montreal, Charlotte, all fighting for 2 spots, essentially. And Chicago and NYCFC both play each other. So that's obviously the marquee matchup in the East. And then on the West side, Sporting KC and Minnesota United play each other. But there's no guarantee that the winner of that match would make it through, because the teams ahead of them, San Jose, Dallas, and Portland, are all playing different opponents. So if San Jose, Dallas, and Portland all take care of business, that Sporting KC Minnesota United game doesn't have as much value. But the Eastern Conference is truly wide open. Any of those 5 teams could make it through.
All right, well, unfortunately, we're not going to see Miami FC in the postseason here. But do me a favor, how would you describe their second half surge? They got close to making the postseason. I believe they were very close to making it up until like a week to go in the season. And also the impact Messi had on the sport here in the States.
Messi's injury kind of took the wind out of their sails, if we're being really honest. They were looking like they were at least going to contend for this bottom portion of the Eastern Conference playoff picture before he got hurt. In terms of impact, I don't know that we're going to see the impact necessarily for a few years, but when you talk about watching sports and young players watching sports and the people that they look up to, if you want to watch football, you watch the NFL because they're the best football players. If you want to watch basketball, you watch the NBA because they're the best. And all of a sudden, for soccer, for a long time, the best players were always playing in these overseas clubs at Arsenal, Man United, Barcelona, Real Madrid, the list goes on. But there was never a player who was playing in an MLS game who you would think was the best in the world. And that finally changed this year for a lot of young players who are growing up playing this game. Soccer is a tremendously popular sport, even in the United States, but we don't see it translate to that next level because oftentimes we think the best players are playing overseas. Well, for one summer at least, maybe the best player in the world, at least for a long time, considered the best player in the world, was playing here in the United States. And that's something that maybe we'll see the impact further along down the line, not necessarily in the immediate future. But it was a great run, and we'll see if Messi sticks around for another few seasons. It could be a really special a few years for Inter Miami, assuming he can stay healthy.
All right, back to the DraftKings Sportsbook here. Your MLS bet due.
Well, I'll take the hometown Chicago Fire at plus 370 against NYCFC. It's a bit of an underdog on the money line. If you really want some protection, you can take Fire double chance, which comes in at plus 120. But both sides need a win here, so I don't really like going for the draw. Double chance plus 120 does offer a little more protection, but I'll take Fire plus 370. Against NYCFC.
And you've already mentioned the chaos expected today on decision day, but are there any MLS futures here on your betting card currently?
I think FC Cincinnati to win it all at plus 350, even though they're the favorite, makes a lot of sense. They're a very good defensive team. They've been the best team in MLS all season and have really, surged to the top of that East table and have created so much distance that it's hard to pick against them. But this is the excitement of playoff formats in general. Really, anything can happen. And especially in soccer, if you stand up defensively for one day, that's good enough to win you the MLS Cup at times. So as a long shot, I like Seattle Sounders. They've won this competition multiple times. They still have some of those veterans like Loldan, Jordan Morris, and Montero who have been through some of this. And at plus 1,400 for a team that has defended really well, in this one-off playoff format, all it takes is a few more good defensive efforts, and all of a sudden, you're playing in the MLS Cup, and anything can happen in 90-plus minutes. So Sounders at plus 1,400 is a good long shot bet.
All right, Jimmy, I also know you're a big NBA guy. The regular season is going to tip on Tuesday. Jules is going to return to the program here coming up. He's going to preview the season ahead. But who would you back right now to win the NBA title?
There were two big moves that were made in the East with Milwaukee and Boston, and I think both those teams are set up extremely well. But I would still have to back, if healthy, the Denver Nuggets to repeat as champions. I think they've kind of got the monkey off their back in terms of playoff success and now can play a little more freely. I know they lost Bruce Brown, but they have some younger players ready to step up. I would take Denver to repeat, but both those Eastern Conference teams, if things click and come together, are very formidable opponents.
Can you take us down a little more, though? Is there someone flying under the radar? Can you give us a dark horse title selection here in the NBA?
Well, how about the Lakers at plus 1,200? They came in late in the year and in the playoffs really, knocked off the Warriors for the first time in a West playoff series since the Steve Kerr era. I know they got swept by the Nuggets, but all those games were pretty close, and the Lakers are intact. They've brought back most of the group that went on that playoff run a year ago. LeBron James and Anthony Davis, we know they have some health issues over the last few seasons. But if they both can stay healthy, there's plenty of depth around this team. And for the first time, there's not that much drama as to where the roster is going to change, what moves are going to be made. It looks like this is for now going to be the team that makes this run together for this season. So I think the Lakers at plus 1,200 offer some good value. Golden State is sitting right there at plus 1,300. You can never really discount the Warriors. We'll see how Chris Paul integrates with that team. But I like those two as sort of secondary contenders in the Western Conference, because really they would have to go through Denver as your primary competition, I think. And then it's one series in the finals, and LeBron is hard to bet against in that type of situation.
Chinmay, your job here is done. Thanks for joining us here on The Sweat, dude. We're diving into more NBA futures with the season tipping off again in just a few days when The Sweat returns after this break.
Welcome back, everybody, to hour number 2 of The Sweat here on DraftKings Network and VSiN. Steve Buchanan alongside Julian Edlow and Josh Applebaum. We're about a few days away from NBA tip-off. We got a season preview segment we're going to do here on The Sweat. Julian Edlow's got a really good NBA season preview on the Unreasonable Odds podcast. Make sure to check that out on iTunes and Spotify. But let's talk about the NBA season preview here on The Sweat first and foremost. Josh, what is the overall strategy on betting the NBA here? Because obviously the vast number of injuries, guys sitting, it's a lot that goes into it. It's probably the most complicated sport to bet on, potentially.
I would totally agree. I think NBA is the hardest sport to win consistently at, just because, and you're seeing Adam Silver trying to, kind of guard against this. You don't know who's going to play every night. That just makes it so difficult on the bettor. So my first, kind of words of advice would be stay glued to Twitter. DraftKings account does a great job of quote tweeting injuries and letting you know if a guy's in or out. So what I like to do is if a guy is out and you are staring at your odds page and you're lucky enough to be able to track this stuff, you have about a 30-second window. Like LeBron's out, Lakers are -10. Before you know it, they're going to be down to -5. So jump on that dog plus the points. Also, if you're looking at totals, one thing I lean on is like pace of play. There's a good breakdown. ESPN Hollinger does a great job. He's almost like the Ken Pom of NBA. Looking at pace, looking at offensive, defensive efficiency. Totals, to me, are a way to attack it overall. But I think with the NBA, pick your spots. You don't have to bet every game. It's a long season. There's back-to-back schedules come into play. But overall, I'm trying to, again, always be against the public in primetime games, follow sharp line moves, but can't stress enough the importance of Twitter and getting these injury alerts and then having the ability to act before the lines move.
Julian, I know you like to jump on lines early in the NFL. Sometimes you get the best lines there.
Yeah.
That's probably the complete opposite for NBA.
Mostly the complete opposite for NBA, like Josh laid out. The only time where I'll say that doesn't apply is if you think you can project who's going to be in and out early. If a guy just took a rest day, he's probably going to be back that game. Maybe you're getting a short line because a guy missed a game, and you can bet it at a good number when he's coming back. Or you can project this is a spot in the schedule I expect guys to sit and get a good number early. So those are the only spots where I would do that. Echo a lot of what Josh said, and along with that injury news, obviously taking advantage of the player props market as well in the NBA. Leaves some pretty good opportunities for that. And I will say, overall strategy early in the season, I'm fine. NFL, college football, I don't want to bet too heavy early in the season because we have to find out what those teams are. I feel like I know what a lot of these teams are, and early in the season is when these guys aren't going to rest and they are healthy. So, for example, Celtics, short favorites against the Knicks opening night. Like 4.5, 5-point home favorites on Friday night, their opening night of the first week. I'll back the Celtics early. Those guys aren't going to rest. They're healthy. They have something to prove. I'll bet them early. The Suns, they have pick 'em type of games against the Warriors and Lakers early in the season. They are loaded. They're going to play those guys, and they have good depth now. So I'll go bigger bets on teams I like early in the season when they're healthy and they're not resting guys because I know what they are rather than different sports where you don't know.
Let's talk about some of the win totals you can take, specifically here on DraftKings Sportsbook. Celtics have the highest projected win total, 55.5 wins. Bucks are right behind them at 54.5. Some teams that had big differences from last year. Suns had 45 wins last year, over-under for this year, 51.5. Sixers had 54 wins last year, over-under for this year, 48.5. Julian, what's some win totals that you like for this upcoming season?
Yeah, I got 5 of them that I give out on the Unreasonable Odds podcast.
Relax, everybody.
So you can get the other 3 there, but I'll give you an under I like and an over that I like right here. Under. World champion Denver Nuggets, 53.5 wins. They won 53 last year when they won it all. We're saying they're going to be better. They lose depth pieces like Jeff Green, like Brown. Those guys move on. Christian Brown will step into a larger role, but they lost some depth. Then we think about the fact that they captured lightning in a bottle last year. MPJ stays healthy. Murray stays healthy. Are they going to all stay healthy this year? And the fact that their superstar, Nikola Jokic, would rather be investing in horses in Serbia rather than playing NBA basketball where he's the most dominant player in the world. He just played 2 months longer. He didn't even want to stay in Denver 3 extra days for the parade. When you get kind of, that grind playing until June, guys like LeBron became accustomed to that. I don't know if Denver can do it again. So Denver under 53.5 wins. In the East, the Hawks over 41.5 wins. I think it's set at 42. You can toggle them on DK Sportsbook. Yes. It's -120 for over 41, which I think is better, 41.5. Once Quinn Snyder took over for this team, they got a lot better. How did they end last year? They beat the Heat, who went to the finals, beat down the Heat badly in a play-in game, and then took the Celtics to 6 games in the first round. This team is pretty good. I think they're going to be much better than 500, so I like backing them there. Moving on from John Collins is addition by subtraction. I like the roster they have.
Did you get Nuggets at 53.5, or was that an alternate?
53.5 was what it was set at.
It's at 52.5 right now. Yep, correct.
Okay, well, you can toggle it to 53.5. You can toggle any of these teams to whatever you want. Bet what you want.
Josh.
Yeah, it's a bit chalky here, but I'm a Celtics fan. I like the team this year, and I think the betting market is really agreeing with you. You mentioned it, Steve. Celtics had the highest win total, 55.5. I like them to go over that number. And again, great point by you, Julian, mentioning the toggle factor. If you go to the DraftKings website, you can adjust it up or down. Obviously, the prices will change. 55.5 is minus 110 both sides. If you go over 54.5, you're willing to pay a little more juice. It's minus 140. That's going to be my play to win 55 games or more. Total actually opened at like 53.5, 54 during the offseason, so it has been bet quite a bit. You never like getting a number after it's moved so much, but I find it hard to believe the Celtics team will not be at least the same or better than last year. Last year, they won 57 games. They add Porzingis. They add Drew Holiday. But I think the other big thing is they've added a ton to their coaching staff. You bring in Charles Lee, a pretty good assistant. You bring in Sam Cassell. You bring in Jeff Van Gundy out of nowhere to now be kind of a mentor type guy. You know, Mazzulla, I think his philosophy is obviously offense. I would like him to stress more defense, but he was a little bit at certain times during the season maybe overmatched as a rookie head coach. That's gone. Now he's got a lot of good veteran coaches to lean on. Also, you're looking at Celtics top 3 offensive efficiency, defensive efficiency. I think they're on a mission, guys. Last year they acted like, oh, we don't need the 1 seed, no big deal. Well, you end up losing, obviously, on the Eastern Conference Finals. So they have something to prove. They have their best roster in years, good coaching staff. I like the Celtics to win. Again, you can either go 55.5 over even minus 110 or 54.5 at minus 140. That's my play.
Ton of player stats you can bet on DraftKings Sportsbook here. One stat you can do, points per game for player. We got Luka and SGA, only 2 players with an over-under of at least 30 points, minus 115 for both overs on that one there. Jordan Poole, though, 24.7 at minus 130 for the over. That's a massive jump for where he ended last year, now playing in Washington alongside Kyle Kuzma, you know, someone who averaged 20 points per game last year. Expected to take a big jump here. Are there any that you like in particular, Julian?
2 of them. One of them is Jordan Poole, who went for 41 the other night in preseason, followed it up by going 1 for 15 with 7 points. That's what you're going to get from Jordan Poole. But you're going to get the volume. So I do think he's going to get there. The other one, though, I don't have him in the Rookie of the Year market. Is he going to play 65 games or not? Maybe. We got to back Victor Wembanyama in some way, and I think I've seen enough here in preseason. Victor Wembanyama over 17.3, one of the lowest offered point per game totals that we have on DraftKings Sportsbook. He's been so good through these last preseason games, and he only shot 6 of 15 the other night, but the volume was there again. And, you know, the ways that he can score, he's hitting threes from the perimeter, he's getting to the basket, he's following shots. I think 17.3 is ultimately going to be too low for Wembanyama. You got to play 41 games, at least 41 games, to cash these points per game props. I think this one will get there. And it's no action, by the way, if you're under 41 games. You wouldn't lose that ticket.
Josh, what are you kind of looking at here?
Yeah, so I'll go Wembanyama. I'm going to attack him in a different way. I'm just going to take him to win Rookie of the Year. I mean, it's chalky, but it's even money. It's plus 100. I mean, this is a guy that we've heard about quite a while, generational talent, kind of the biggest prospect we've seen to take on the NBA since LeBron. And Julian mentioned how he's been pretty good in the preseason. I mean, Wembanyama, he's averaging, 19.3 points a game. Doesn't look to me like he's struggled at all thus far. So if you're getting Wembanyama, now it's moved a bit, minus 125, but still you're not paying that much of a price. I liken this a little bit to the NHL, Connor Bedard. It's another generational talent here that was around the same price. We're not looking at Wembanyama like, to go first overall when he was like minus 2,000. This is a pretty palatable number. It'll give you a rooting interest throughout the year. I think this guy is going to get better as he gets more experience. So if this was minus 500, Steve, I'd be a little bit more wary of playing it or even laying off. But at minus 125, close to even money, I think that's a steal. I'm going to go Wembanyama. And again, if someone else beats him out, Scoot Henderson, another one of these guys, I'll tip my cap. But I think the play is Wembanyama Rookie of the Year.
Julian, let's just talk about those awards real quick. Do you have a take on the Rookie of the Year? Because obviously Wemby, the overall favorite at this point here. Is that something to take at this point at minus 125? Because it feels like if this goes like we expect, we're like, wow, I could have had him at minus 125 before, for the opening night even happened.
Yeah, there's a path here that if you don't have a Wembanyama ticket for Rookie of the Year, you could feel like an idiot come April. Just be like, this is, the best prospect arguably of all time, and I had him around even money for Rookie of the Year, and I didn't bet him. I bet Scoot Henderson at plus 350 over the summer when the Lillard trade rumbles started. And it did move down just because obviously you get Lillard out of there, you give more to Scoot,
Plus 240.
just kind of hand the franchise to him. He's now plus 240. So I'll keep that one in pocket, and I'll probably have to get some Wembanyama at some point, just given what we're seeing in preseason and what he's gonna look like.
Josh, any feel for like a league winner? Maybe you want to do a conference seeding to make the play-in tournament. Anything you want to see for kind of a futures bet here?
So not a ton there, but Steve, I'll give you one more win total that just caught
Sure.
my eye. Cleveland Cavaliers, like the Cavs, to go over 50.5 wins. Can they win 51 games? They did it last year. They went 51-31. I lean on a lot of analytics. I want a team that's almost like in college basketball. You get to the tournament who's good both offensive and defensive efficiency. You had Cleveland #1 defensive efficiency in the NBA. This is a league that doesn't really play much defense, yet they do. That's going to keep them in a lot of games. Mitchell going into year 2, pairing up with Garland. They added Max Strus for some shooting. Allen Mobley have been really good as these big, tall, young players. So I like this team to even get better from last year. Let's have them win 51 games or more. I got over 50.5 with the Cavs.
Any thoughts on a league winner here?
Yeah, so in the East, obviously Josh went over the Celtics win total-wise. I'm going to sit on this team and let them get through the season healthy. If they can do that, I think they are the best team, and I will bet them entering the postseason to stay healthy and win it all. In the West, I'll go against Denver as I did earlier. I think the Suns are the best roster. They got those 3 guys, and then what they really did, they upgraded at center, I think, going from Ayton to Nurkic, and they built depth around those guys. I like Phoenix to come out of the West.
All right, thanks, guys. Huge NHL slate coming up today. Here we'll have NHL's Anna Dua and DraftKings' Jeff Ulrich break it all down with Emerson in the other room after this break.
Hockey. It's a sport I know nothing about, but fortunately we have other people here that do. Big old Saturday slate of games, and we're going to go to Emerson, Jeff, and Anna in the other studio to cover this betting card.
The first week of the NHL season is already behind us, which means it's time to get some answers from this compelling Canadian duo, Anna Dua of NHL.com, DraftKings contributor Jeff Ulrich on the right. Guys, looking at the West, Golden Knights and Avalanche off to undefeated starts. So, Anna, now has got to be a good time to start stacking some of these lines, right, and rack up DFS points targeting these two teams?
I mean, absolutely. I think these are two teams that we expected to be good this regular season. So not a complete surprise, although going undefeated is no easy feat. Some players I'm looking at so far are Chandler Stevenson and Shea Theodore for the Golden Knights. They've had really hot starts. Jack Eichel as well, 28 shots on goal so far this season. He's really impressed me. And for Colorado, it has to be the trio, right, of Rantanen, McKinnon, and Makar. Those three have had great start to the year. Those two teams are definitely juggernauts in the West right now.
Jeff, Jack Eichel is as happy as he's ever been in his career, isn't he? He's 3-2-5 out of the gate.
Yeah, he should be happy. I mean, he's a Stanley Cup champion. He's finally getting appreciated. I think for DFS, I mean, the Golden Knights are a little bit tougher to target. Anna mentioned Chandler Stevenson. I really like the situation for him playing alongside Mark Stone. That is potentially going to be an all-season story if Stone stays healthy. So Stevenson just continues to be like a good buy low target. I think for the Avalanche, it's just more condensed. It's Mikko Rantanen, it's Nathan McKinnon. I think one player to watch there on the Avalanche is Jonathan Drouin, playing a lot on the first line right now. I mean, I think the assists for him could start to pile up. He hasn't done too much offensively, but he's a very skilled player. And we saw with like Nichushkin when he got a chance with Colorado, when you play alongside guys like that quality, good things will happen.
And Georgiev in the crease there for Colorado, guys. 4 straight wins to start the season. The first 3 on the road. Finished 7th in Vezina voting last season, plus 1,600 for it, right? Meow. By the way, that included a shutout on Thursday night, 4-0 against the Blackhawks. Now the Knights come to town to visit Connor Bedard and company, who the hockey world has officially crowned, Jeff, as the real deal. So where would you put this game among must-watch tonight?
Oh, I think anytime Connor Bedard is playing, it's going to be a must-watch this year. I mean, people want to see how good he actually is. And I mean, obviously already getting a taste that he's extremely good, but is he even the best rookie on the team though? I mean, Arvid Soderblom, I mean, that's the guy I'm looking forward to. I don't think we're going to get him in this game, but I do expect that, this is going to be a really tough matchup for Bedard. I don't really expect him to do that much. I mean, he's got a tough center going up against it on the other side with Eichel, we just talked about. I think this is probably a spot where you'll see flashes from Bedard, but don't expect an outburst on the scoring sheet. The Blackhawks are just really overmatched here, so it's probably going to be an easy win for the Golden Knights.
Yeah, Anna, Bedard going up against a brick wall there between the pipes.
He is right now, but I mean, I feel like down in the States, Connor Bedard has just been coined the real deal, whereas in Canada, we've known this for years and years and years. So I'm happy that people are finally acknowledging it. I mean, this kid's a generational talent. Even if he doesn't get past the Vegas Golden Knights and get some points on the board, which I think there's a decent chance he will on a nightly basis, to be honest, guys. I wouldn't be surprised if this kid ends up being a point per game player this season. He's going to put up shots on goal, right? He's just outside of the top 5 in the NHL in shots on goal so far this season with 20. So I look to see him continuing in that trajectory. It's going to be a tough matchup, but I don't count Connor Bedard out in a single game this year.
And Jeff, in the East, Senators and Red Wings here off to hot starts, and you've mentioned to us before, like Detroit's offense really surprising you in the first week. What do you think would stop these two teams from keeping up this kind of pace for the long haul this season?
I mean, running into good goalies, potentially, just a little bit of scoring regression. I mean, I really like the way Dylan Larkin, DeBrincat have worked at the start. I mean, you have questions. Is Dylan Larkin like a true playmaking center? But I mean, 5 assists, potentially going to set career highs here in assists with DeBrincat on his side. I mean, it just looks really good to start. I mean, their power play has been clicking. It's number 1 in the league right now. I think there's just a lot of potential for the Red Wings to keep it going. Always thought Dylan Larkin, a little bit underrated player, just playing on such bad teams. I'm glad that he's going to potentially get to show it for a whole year and maybe get some recognition now that Detroit maybe will be good. I think for Ottawa, there's just still a ton of offensive talent as well. Just not sure if they have as deep a team. So, Stützle obviously is going to be an all-season story as well. But I think these are both teams where for DFS, you should be targeting them all season, especially when they're going up against each other because, the goaltending on either side is still big question marks.
Yeah, Anna, Josh Norris notching a pair of goals in his first game in 10 months had to be beyond encouraging for Ottawa on Wednesday, right?
Absolutely. That's a huge return for the Ottawa Senators. I mean, I had this team making the postseason this year in my preseason predictions, and I would double down on that any single day because I think it's a well-rounded squad. I think this is the most well-rounded squad they're heading into a season with in quite a few years. I like Josh Norris returning. We saw the immediate impact he had, but more so than that, a lot of top-end talent on this team. They have some blue line players that have stood out to me. Jake Sanderson has really proven himself so far. He's doing great on that squad. And I just feel like in the long run, the Detroit Red Wings, great start to the year. Alex DeBrincat, gotta appreciate what he's done so far. But I think if one of those two teams makes it into the postseason, when it's all said and done, it's probably going to be the Ottawa Senators.
Well, Anna, they collide tonight. So which one are you giving the edge to? You just had so many good things to say about both squads. Let's go.
I did. I got to give the edge to the Ottawa Senators, and I admit doing that because they like playing against Detroit, guys. They won 3 out of the last 4 games they played against the Detroit Red Wings last season. Brady Tkachuk is an absolute beast against the Detroit Red Wings. He had 5 points in those 4 games. So the Sens like playing the Red Wings. I see that continuing in this matchup.
All right, Jeff, what say you?
I mean, look, I'll go against Anna here a little bit. I mean, I think these teams are very close. I mean, I think they both will have a shot at doing something, but I like the Red Wings better. I mean, I just think their top line a little bit more steady with Larkin. I think the big thing is for DFS, you don't need to worry about who's winning this game. If you're getting some exposure, I mean, take the over. I mean, there should be a lot of points in this game.
All right, so it was 2 games on the Friday night slate last night, but tonight it is big, it is beefy at 15 games, Jeff Ulrich. So tell me right now, give me a player you are targeting for some fantasy points.
I mean, I like the spot for Colorado. You've got, Sebastian Aho questionable with an upper body injury. They don't have Svechnikov back. Carolina allowing a lot more goals, just playing open. I mean, I still like Carolina long term. I like the fact they're opening it up, but I don't think it's a good spot for them against Colorado. I think Mikko Rantanen in a really good spot. He's had a really hot start to the year. Like I said, Druin clicking a little bit on that top line. I think Colorado's on a bit of a mission here early, and I would just keep riding it. I like Mikko Rantanen on Saturday.
All right, Anna, who is atop your fantasy rankings tonight, Saturday night? 15 games. Take your pick.
I really like Evgeny Malkin. I feel like this is a player where we never put enough respect on his name. He's had a phenomenal start to the season as well for himself with 7 points, 3 goals in the first 4 games, 18 shots on goal. And he's another player I really like looking at the matchup history, guys, in DFS specifically. He had 5 points in 2 games against St. Louis last year, and they're playing the Blues. So I like Malkin. I think he's going to keep the ball going.
All right, defenseman now. Anna, who's in a good spot to put up some points?
Well, I can double down first of all on Jake Sanderson. I talked about how much I'm excited about him this entire season. He's on a 3-game point streak right now with 5 points in the span. He's playing on power play 1 for the Ottawa Senators, which is a spot we didn't expect him to be in this early on, doing well. There's a lot of talent on that top power play unit. So I like either him or Vince Dunn as well. He has 5 points in his past 3 games, has really picked up the pace across those games. So one of those 2 guys on the blue line is who I'm looking at.
All right, Jeff. The Blue Man Group, who are you taking tonight?
You're paying up Erik Karlsson. Anna mentioned the St. Louis Blues. They've already got the worst penalty kill. The Penguins could score 6 or 7 goals here. Erik Karlsson going to be in great spot in that first power play. But, again, we got to keep, unfortunately, Emerson, we have to keep attacking the weak Oilers netminders. Josh Morrissey already got a bunch of assists. He's averaging like 3.5 shots on goal over his last 3 games. Morrissey's in a great spot on Saturday as well.
It's interesting, Jeff, because we've talked multiple times before, like Edmonton in a position where they're just going to have to outscore everybody like 8-7. But really, Anna, I believe your preseason cup pick, Carolina, right? What is going on with them right now? Because they're in a spot, this has been absolute chaos for them to start the season, where it looks like they're the team that's going to have to outscore everybody like 8-7.
This is like really abnormal for the Carolina Hurricanes. If you watch Carolina Hurricanes hockey last season, you know they're usually low scoring games. So what we're seeing so far is definitely out of the norm for this team. To be honest, it's the goaltenders, guys. They brought 3 goalies back this season. Not a single one of them has above a .900 save percentage so far. Pyotr Kochetkov, I know he just got recalled, so I'm giving him a little bit more bandwidth to pick up the pace. Carolina is still one of the best teams in the league in terms of allowing the fewest shots on goal per game. So their offense is doing as much as they can. Their defense is doing as much as they can. Their goalies are just absolutely dropping the ball right now. And I'm hoping that a young guy like Kochetkov can really find some momentum to get some wins, because they've been bailed out a lot by the rest of their team so far this season.
All right, Jeff, quickly here. What's your level of concern with Carolina and what we're seeing out of them?
It's far lower than it is with a team like the Oilers. I mean, as Anna said, I mean, they're not allowing that many shots. They're the Carolina Hurricanes. They'll get it figured out. The goalies will probably take some time to get into form, but once they get their top 2 players back in terms of forwards as well, it's going to help them.
All right, you two rock. Thanks for hanging out with us on The Sweat. The show will return after this break. We got some Major League Baseball bets. Steve and Josh will get you ready for this weekend slate coming up.
it didn't make any sense to me. I mean, we got a 2-run game, and they explained to me that, you know, the guy just hit a 3-run homer, but that was a mistake that he hit a 3-run homer. His ball was down and in, and he wasn't trying to go down and in. And, we pitch him up, and we pitch him up and in. And anytime you're throwing a projectile 97 miles an hour, some of them are going to get away. I don't care if you're big league, Hall of Fame, I don't care who you are. And, I'm just glad we came back, and won the game. The guys were with us because, we didn't do anything wrong.
Astros manager Dusty Baker defending Brian Abreu from last night's hit by pitch on Adolis Garcia that really just added to the excitement and drama of the baseball that we've had really over the past 48 hours. Like, I would say the MLB playoffs have been pretty boring thus far. I mean, it's been a lot of blowouts. It's been a lot of sweeps. The drama hasn't been there, but the past 48 hours for Major League Baseball has been fantastic. And then we cap it all off there. Jose Altuve, 3-run home run to give the Astros not only the win in that game against the Rangers, but now the series lead. We have now seen, Josh, 2 series that started off 2-0 in favor of one team. Now they're either tied or the opposing team, who was down 0-2, is now in the league, as Howie walks in front of the camera. Let's talk about the MLB playoffs here and what we've seen thus far. We'll talk about that game there with the Astros and the Rangers. Altuve, obviously a huge game here. He had that 3-run home run last night after, oddly, bunting. Did you see this? bunting with 2 on, 2 outs. It kind of felt like he didn't know how many outs were in that game there, but the 3-run shot there off of Jose Leclerc, who has now pitched in 8 of the 10 games that the Rangers have played thus far. What are your thoughts on this series here, specifically as we head into Game 6 tomorrow? What are your kind of thoughts on that series so far?
Yeah, Steve, I think you hit on a couple really important things. One, we've done shows every weekend, and we were kind of, lamenting the fact that those early wild card matchups just were not very interesting. You had a lot of sweeps, didn't really have much drama. Well, MLB is now making up for that now with a lot of great games in general. If you come with the king, you best not miss, though, Steve. That's what I'll say to the Texas Rangers, because you were looking good. You're up 2-0 in the series. And I think this is why Houston, you never want to count them out. The championship medal, the experience, going down 0-2, especially at home, you look like, hey, this is maybe going to be Texas's year. Houston might be running out of gas, but not anymore. 3 straight wins. You're up 3-2. There's a decent, short favorite for the next game here if they can close it out. Tomorrow, they're like -120. Valdez against Eovaldi. But now the series price, Steve, Houston's -450. They're expected to win this thing, and they're the new favorite to win the World Series now at -105. Phillies are +235. They're in a dogfight now against Arizona with that series tied up. D-backs +450, Rangers +700. Steve, I know you might have some futures already in pocket, but we're down to the Final Four. The prices are moving. Who do you like to win the World Series based on the current prices?
Oh, my God. I mean, this is getting pretty difficult at this point now. Like you mentioned, the Astros are the favorite right now, -105. Then you got Phillies at +235, Diamondbacks at 450, Rangers at 700. The Rangers are really interesting at this point because I like them a lot to win tomorrow night. They're even on the money line with Nathan Eovaldi to take the mound, +100 there, going up against Framber Valdez. Let me tell you something. If you're a Houston Astros fan, that's probably the last guy you want taking the mound in a potential series clincher. Valdez has been brutal in the playoffs so far. 7 innings pitched, 10 runs on 14 hits through 2 starts in this postseason. And that's the team that's favored right now. It doesn't make a lot of sense to me. So when you're looking at who's going to win the World Series, the Rangers have to be very live here at 7-1 odds. Because if I like them to win tomorrow, then we're talking about a Game 7, where obviously everything is on the table at that point. And if the Rangers can get out of there, the Rangers haven't been a bad team. The offense has actually kind of been lackluster if you look at the overall stats. But the Rangers do, and they've done this, what they do best, is that they hit for power. And they're putting up those runs in multiple instances. So, like, their hits are counting for multiple runs in these situations because the power has been there, but the overall hitting for the Rangers has not. So, looking at that future, I kind of like the Rangers at 7-1 now because, again, I just think they're very live at this point. And then if they're going to have to combat either the Phillies or the Diamondbacks, it's going to be a great series. But I still like the Rangers despite what we've seen over the past couple games here.
Yeah, and I think to your point, Steve, got a couple things going on right now. Number one, look at the home road splits for the Houston Astros this year. On the road, they're amazing.
Huge.
51 and 30.
Huge difference.
Steve, at home, they're 39 and 42 in the regular season. That is so weird. Typically, you take care of business at home. If you're 500 on the road, you end up having a good year. But that hasn't happened for whatever reason. Houston really hasn't had that home field advantage. Texas Rangers, now they haven't been great on the road this year, 40-41, but they've had that familiarity and that comfort of going into Houston. There's no travel involved, and having some upsets. Eovaldi, got to mention him. He's been fantastic. As Red Sox fans, Steve, we're not happy the Red Sox let him go. Big game pitcher who's been awesome in these big starts. And then here's the big angle, and we'll get to Philly, Arizona here in a second. But it's these dogs. They just continue to bark. I don't know what it is about this MLB postseason. Typically you see a lot of chalk favorites do well. Not this year. You look at the updated record for dogs in the playoffs, 21-10. 68%. This is incredible. Dogs not only, and again, think about, if you're going like run line or +1.5. No. This is straight up 21-10. They're winning 2/3 of the time. If you had bet $100 on every dog this MLB postseason, you're up almost $1,600, Steve. So that would match tomorrow. Again, Houston bad at home. Rangers with Eovaldi. Dogs been barking. I'm kind of with you. I might add that Eovaldi, with the plus money in my card tomorrow.
And both dogs this weekend, I like both of them. That brings us to the NLCS here with the Phillies and the Diamondbacks. Diamondbacks got another late inning win there yesterday as well. So now this series is tied against the Phillies, and it's a series that looked like it was almost going to be potentially another sweep in these playoffs here. The D-backs have now won consecutive games when trailing in the 7th inning or later, and this is also the 4th come-from-behind win by the Diamondbacks in this postseason. So, what has been the issue for Philly? Well, I'll give you 2 words. Craig Kimbrel, the potential Hall of Famer, who is also probably one of the worst closers in Major League Baseball. I don't know why this guy consistently gets his roses here, because when the lights are the brightest, it's when Craig Kimbrel shuts down and can't get the job done, thus giving the Diamondbacks some life here in this series. Now, the only thing that is going for the Phillies when it comes to pitching at this point is that they haven't had to use this bullpen a lot because the starters have been so good. If you look at the innings covered by their 3 top starters, we're talking about Zach Wheeler, Aaron Nola, and Ranger Suarez, they have pitched a combined 51 1/3 innings in the playoffs thus far out of a possible 87 innings. So we're talking about 60% of the innings pitched by Philly overall has been covered by those 3 guys. But that brings us to tonight's game. I do like the Diamondbacks a lot here because we're getting Zach Gallen at home. That is where Zach Gallen has been his best. 2.47 ERA, 262 WOBA. Only 7 of the 22 home runs that he's allowed have come at home. Zach Wheeler has been better on the road as well. 3.16 ERA, 262 WOBA for him. Only 7 of this 20 home runs allowed here. We're definitely going to get a pitching duel. But I am more than comfortable with backing Gallen at home tonight, +110. It's crazy to think about. Diamondbacks might have a series lead after tonight.
I think you're right, Steve, and you mentioned could be a great pitching matchup here tonight. I'm looking at the board right now. This line for the total was pretty much sitting at 8. It's getting down to 7.5 at some shops. So to your point, maybe we get a lower scoring game. I'm right there with you on Craig Kimbrel. Unbelievable, Steve. I had the under 9.5 yesterday, and I'm feeling good about that until Craig Kimbrel comes in. He just continues to cough it up in the postseason in particular. I mean, if you look at his career record or his career ERA, regular season, 2.40 ERA, pretty darn good.
Yeah.
Postseason, 4.66. So to me, I don't want to touch the total, even though this feels like an underplay.
It does.
I'm right there with you, Steve. I'm going to go with Arizona in this spot. We're starting to see this line fall in their favor. They open getting as high as +120. Now they're down to around +115, +110. I gave you that stat a second ago about how these dogs have done so well in the postseason. Well, I'll take it a step further. If you're a dog off a win, you're carrying some momentum, and you're getting plus money. Those teams are 15-4 this postseason, wow. 79%, +14 units won. I would look in one situation, though, if this ends up being, Arizona getting a win here tonight, taking that 3-2 lead. Look at the next game. It's going to be at Citizens Bank Ballpark. That's where the Phillies have been unbelievable. Don't have a line as of now on that game, Steve. but they're 12-2 at home, the Phillies are, over the last 2 postseasons, 6-0 this postseason. So if they lose today, probably come back, take Philly as long as the price isn't too extravagant. But again, pitching duel tonight, totals falling 8 to 7.5. But I'm right there with you. Give me plus money Arizona. A lot of good system matches on the Snakes tonight.
Yeah, just real quick, too. One play that I do consider, too, because I know you said you're a little iffy about the total. You can do over-under on total hits. I like under 16.5 hits tonight. That feels like a lot for the 2 guys taking them on. The 2 guys that can give you length. I just told you how much the Phillies rotation has been covering already. So I like under 16.5 hits. Real quick thoughts on that? Any idea?
Sounds good to me, Steve. I'll just mention here Wheeler over 5.5 strikeouts. He is
I do like
in
that
the
one too.
postseason.
Yeah,
It's juiced up over -165, but he had 8 against Miami, 10 against Atlanta, 8 against Arizona this series. Let's get 6 or more Ks for Wheeler.
Regardless of what you take, should be a really good, solid weekend of baseball. The postseason has been fantastic over the past 48 hours. Hope to see more of that here tonight. All right, we're going to take another break here on The Sweat. When we come back, we're going to wrap up the show here, give us our favorite bets of the day, and where can you find some value on the sportsbook? We call this segment Hidden Jewels. We'll see how hidden they actually are. We'll be right back.
What is up, and welcome back into this Saturday edition of The Sweat here on DraftKings Network. It is time for the highest rated segment of the program, that being Hidden Jewels. Do we have a graphic? We have a graphic! It's back. They told me they were changing it. They didn't change a thing. It looks exactly the same, but it is nice to have a graphic back on Hidden Jewels.
That's before you went on keto. It looks like before you went on keto.
I don't even know what keto is. Anyway, going out for a steak bomb after the show.
Not keto friendly.
Hidden Jewels, we're going to dig you, I am going to take you through the DraftKings Sportsbook, navigate some potential hidden value. Maybe it's just things you're not looking at right now. Bets you wouldn't know are there. We're going to start going to the ACC in college football. We'll start with one that is a little bit more prominent, but all the hype right now in the ACC, guys, is Florida State. Are they going to run the table? We're laying a big minus number on them to win the conference. How about UNC, who's also undefeated in the ACC? These teams don't even play each other in the regular season. We got UNC plus 300 to win the ACC. Drake May and company looking pretty good. UNC has won plenty of games where bettors have been against them. And you look at the rest of the field, Louisville, Duke, Clemson. These are teams that don't have a very good shot to get in. UNC's win total is 10.5 on DK Sportsbook. We could have a matchup of 12-0s, unbeatens in the ACC. You look at the schedule for UNC, there's not many tough matchups left. They do have to end at Clemson and at NC State. Maybe they drop one of those. They get to host Duke. But I think UNC is going to be in this game, and when they are, they're going to be a short dog to FSU. So I'll just take the 3-1 now and root for the Tar Heels in that game.
Yeah, it could be a hedging opportunity, Julian, too. Again, if they match up against each other and you're holding that ticket, and we'll see what the spread would be on that game going into it. I'll disagree a little bit. I just think this is kind of a short price on Florida State, minus 180. This team is kind of, a throwback Florida State team like you're used to back in the day before they went on some tough times here. But led by a really good quarterback. They're ranked. They're undefeated. Minus 180 doesn't seem that high to me. Again, hedging opportunity could be created later, but I actually kind of like laying that juice there with Florida State to win the conference.
I just don't know how much different the price of FSU versus UNC would be than minus 180 on the money line come that Saturday in December. But we're going from college football over to college hoops. We haven't talked much college hoops yet. It is upon us, though, and I'm looking at a long number in the SEC. The SEC is going to be a really good conference in college basketball this season. Arkansas, plus 800 to win the regular season SEC. This is a team that we know how good they are as the season goes on with Musselman. They've generally been a good team. It's, Kentucky, Tennessee is the favorite there. Kentucky's always going to be in there. A&M's got a good team. Bama's got a decent team. But this team brings in a lot of talent. They keep Debo Davis, the guard. They have Brazil, the big man, back. They transfer in L. Ellis from Louisville, Battle from Temple. Good, proven transfers coming in. And then, as usual, throw a few Mickey D's All-Americans in there. This team's going to have as much talent as anyone. I think they're 14 in the preseason rankings, AP-wise. I've seen some rankings have them as high as 10. If you're giving me a top 10 team that's 8-1 to win their conference, no matter how talented the conference is, give it to me. And we know Eric Musselman's going to get stronger as the season goes on once we get in conference play. Hogs, 8-1 SEC.
So I'm going to agree with you on that one, Julian. I think it's a pretty good value play, 8-1. Now, as you're mentioning this, I'm dialing up my favorite go-to resource when it comes to college basketball, KenPom. So for those of you who have been betting college basketball, you know this name. If you don't, highly recommend looking at the KenPom Analytics, best in the country when it comes to looking at not only efficiency, but also there's a fan match tab where he looks at matchups and kind of gives you a predicted final score. You can kind of play that number off the market. But to your point, Julian, he's got Arkansas 14th in the nation right now. You have Musselman, who obviously is a great coach, continues to get better, good motivator. They have another good recruiting class. Mike, one question would be, Tennessee. Tennessee is the favorite, plus 300. KenPom's got them ranked 8th, but to your point, it's the value of the number, that plus 800 if they continue to play well, as they have the last few years. Maybe that shortens throughout the year. So if the goal is to pick off a good number now and see that thing shrink or move in your favor, I'm with you there on the Razorbacks.
Love me some KenPom. I will have one bone to pick with KenPom. Purdue is number 1.
Every year he's got him winning it all, yeah. Never happens.
That's going to prove incorrect. Anyway, moving on. We're going to MLB. You guys touched on it a little bit in the MLB segment, but I know we're all talking about tonight's game. We got college football. We got Sunday night football, a big one between the Eagles and the Dolphins, but that is when Rangers and Astros Game 6 is going to go off. I'm not going to go to the full game here. We got a day off in between. I trust Houston's bullpen a little bit more. We just saw the Rangers bullpen kind of revert back to what it was at times in the regular season, give up that bomb to Altuve. But the first 5 is priced the same as the full game on DraftKings Sportsbook. Both are even money. Who do I want here? I want Eovaldi, big game postseason pitcher. Everything that Craig Kimbrell is not, Nathan Eovaldi is against Valdez, who, Texas hits really well. Rangers, first 5 money line, even money. I feel like we're all going to be on board here, but this is just one I'm going to early. It's not often a day in advance you get a first 5 line. We've got one here. I want it now.
I do not understand this line at all. Like, if you look at what Valdez has done, even dating back to his last couple starts in the regular season, he hasn't gone more than 5 1/3 innings in 4 straight games now at this point. Both of his postseason starts have been absolutely abysmal. We talked about it on the last segment here. 9 earned runs allowed on 14 hits, and we're talking about a total of 7 innings, including 1 start against the Texas Rangers. 5 runs, 4 of them earned, a home run. Just has not pitched well at all. I don't get how that the Astros are favored in this spot. I'm with you 100%. I'm backing the Rangers here.
All right. I'm going to assume Josh is on board there before we move on, because we already did the baseball segment. We don't need to keep going. Here's a hidden market for you. Yes, we can bet awards in the NBA. We all know that. But the only place you can bet a first-team All-NBA, first All-Rookie Team NBA, first All-Defensive Team NBA, we have these markets up on DraftKings Sportsbook. Jrue Holiday, new addition to the Celtics. Every year, he's either first or second-team All-NBA. You go back and look. I was expecting like a 2-to-1, maybe plus 250 here, plus 450 for Jrue Holiday, who's generally like a coin flip to make first-team All-Defense. We saw 2 years ago Marcus Smart, not just first-team All-Defense as the starting point guard of the Celtics, Defensive Player of the Year. Last year, Derek White just barely misses first team. He's second-team All-Defense. Holiday, he generally alternates years, so he was first team last year, so he's due for second team this year. I think stepping into this role with the Celtics, who have consistently produced a guard on these all-defensive teams, at 4.5 to 1 on Jrue Holiday, I like this one a lot. Give me Jrue Holiday plus 450, first team all-defense.
I like that play, Julian. Also mentioned we have some more awards to bet, so luckily for the NBA, they're creating more markets for us. There's a Clutch Player Award, a couple of these other ones that will provide opportunities for bettors. I'll just throw one more at you, Julian. Nikola Jokic. Now, he's plus 450 to an MVP. Obviously, he went back and forth with Embiid all last year. But Jokic to just be on the All-NBA team, minus 140. To me, that's kind of a short number. Maybe if you're going to bypass or worried, I know you like the payout there on the 450, but this is a pretty likely outcome, minus 140 to be All-NBA team. I like that play for Jokic.
I went Tatum plus 150 because it's either got to beat, you can only do one center, so it's basically Embiid versus Jokic there. Tatum at plus 150. Giannis is there as a forward. Once you get beneath that, it's like LeBron, KD, Davis, older guys. What does Tatum do? He plays every night. That's my first team bet. But we're going to transition over to no sweat bets to wrap the show. Steve, you want to lead us off here?
Yeah, I'm just going to go with the underdog here once again for Major League Baseball. Give me the Diamondbacks on the money line at plus 110 with Zach Gallen on the mound. If you look at the difference between his numbers on the road and at home, they're vastly different. He pitched almost identical numbers in both locations, gave up 25 less runs at home than he did on the road this season. Phillies have a very scary offense that we have to combat here, but I just think what the Diamondbacks have going off yesterday, coming in today, I like them here on the money line.
Josh, no sweat bet. Where are we going?
Going to the biggest game of the day, Julian. Penn State, Ohio State. I want to apologize for not giving you this stat earlier today, but I was actually looking at James Franklin straight up against ranked teams. Now, he's had a great record at Penn State winning games, 74-31, 71% win rate, but he is Jekyll and Hyde against ranked teams. Against ranked teams at Penn State, he is just 10-19 straight up, 35%. Against top 10 teams, he's 2-14, 13%. So this tells me that kind of just reinforces my bet here on Ohio State. I'm going to money line them minus 185. I'm not going to lay the spread just in case it's a short win here. Again, 2 ranked teams take the home favorite, 82% since 2016. Franklin, not good against ranked opponents. Give me Buckeyes to win the game on the money line.
Difference this time around, as we heard from some sound from Franklin earlier on, he thinks that Penn State is now in that class. Can they hang? We're going to find out soon. Noon kick. I'm sticking in that game for a best bet as well. I have under 47.5 in that game. I'll give it out at a worse number now. I don't care because I think it's going to be that kind of grinder.
Wow.
Under 45.5. Yeah, Steve, that's right. Under 45.5, Ohio State and Penn State. I compare it to that Notre Dame game. I think it's going to be a real grind here. Two teams led by their defenses, two teams that know each other very well. So I like that one a lot. Don't care about the number. That's a show, gentlemen, but we are going to be back for a Sunday edition of The Sweat here on DraftKings Network. So tune back in 8 a.m. to 10 a.m. tomorrow morning, and we're going to go over that big NFL board among other things here on The Sweat. Thanks for joining us, guys.